Okay, well, hello and welcome. Welcome to everyone who's joined us today. And welcome to everyone who's introducing themselves in the chat. Let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're here today to discuss challenges and solutions surrounding building an incident response plan together with Hub Security's very own Itzik Nechama. He is DFIR team leader at Hub Security, and we're also joined by a number of other industry experts, including Mario Bellotti, Nuno Teodoro, Jerry Caponera, and lastly, Victoria van Roosmanin. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you for being here with us today. We're going to start our webinar as usual with a few introductions, and we're going to start with an introduction from Itzik Nechama, and then our panelists will each get a chance to briefly introduce themselves. Afterwards, we're going to get into a bit of a deeper discussion on everything related to incident response, including its challenges and solutions. And as usual, we'll leave about 30 minutes at the end. So if you have any aching questions, anything itching your mind, you can throw it in the Q&A box and we'll get to it at the end of the event. Yeah. So let's get started. We have an impressive lineup of panelists tonight, and I'm excited to have them each introduce themselves to you. So, but before we begin, we'll start with a few words from Itzik Nechama, the DFIR team leader at Hub Security, before we hand off the mic for introductions. Itzik, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thank you, and welcome everyone who joined us today on this webinar. My name is Itzik. I'm the DFIR team leader at Hub Security. My team is provide mostly incident response, of course, but also SOC services such cyber drills, SOC as a service. But it's only one team across the cyber resilient department. There is two more teams. Offensive security, which provide DDoS simulation attack, phishing attack, red team operations, and physical intrusion. So I believe following the discussion, we have the chance to dive deeper in my team services.
Great, thank you, Itzik. We're glad that you can join us today. I think this is our first webinar together, so welcome. Now let's take a few minutes to do a quick introduction round with our panelists, starting with Mario. Why don't you give our audience a bit of background on yourself and your field of expertise?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Mario Bellotti. I'm from Caracas, Venezuela. I've been at this IT game for a bit now, almost 16 years. I'm an engineer at heart. I've been doing a bit of everything: technical support, physical security, email security, you name it. And I've been also, here and there. I started my career, as you know, in Caracas, Venezuela. Then I moved to Malta. Then I did a short stint in Ireland. And I'm now coming to you live from Madrid, Spain. And well, like I said, I'm a bit of a technical guy, and I recently started as a CISO and digital security officer for AXA Madrid International Hub, which is basically a support arm for AXA as a whole in terms of their entities. I'm happy to connect with anyone and support them in any way I can from my position. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mario, and thanks for joining us. Jerry, why don't you go next, Jerry Caponera?
Sure, thank you. It's nice to meet you all. Appreciate being here. I'm calling today from the Washington, D.C. area. So I'm on the East Coast of the States, 12 o'clock midday here. And it's actually sunny for a change here in the States. So I'm actually very, very happy about that. I'm the VP of Cyber Risk Strategy at a company called Threat Connect. And really my background, my expertise is in understanding cyber risk, both technically and from a financial perspective. Like Mario, I started my career as a nerd, as an engineer. In fact, I was an electrical engineer as an undergrad. And I did it not knowing this, but I get to now make the joke for the rest of my life that you can't spell geek without double E. So that's just kind of a side benefit of being an electrical engineer for those who are still in school or thinking about it. But one of my passion areas and what I spent most of the last, I don't know, 5 or 7 years doing is really helping organizations figure out what to do with risk and how to prioritize mitigations. Because when you get into red teaming and pen testing and incident response, unless you have an army of people, unless you've got thousands and thousands of people, you have to figure out how to prioritize and what to do next. And my passion is to figure out how to do that in terms that meet business expectations. Because if you're on this webinar and you don't like getting paid, please call me, because I could use donations with my children. But we all do this for a living, and our companies exist to really make money and to move forward. And our goal as cybersecurity professionals is to help keep our companies in business. That's our job. Keep people safe, keep people in business, keep people employed. And so that's my passion area, and I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, and we're really glad that you could share your perspective with us today too. Victoria, why don't you go next? Good to see you again.
Likewise, happy to be here. So my name is Victoria. I am the CISO and DPO at Cousteau, which is the leading content and social media marketing tool in the Netherlands. Well, just like the others, I have a strong technical background, primarily when it comes to also electrical engineering and DevOps affairs. But my focus has, primarily shifted to the information security and privacy governance for the last decade or so, to really help, enabling businesses being able to really focus on the value that they aim to deliver. So people can really focus on, we want to deliver this value to our customers, and obviously security, privacy, and everything that comes around with it. It's important to focus on, but I want them to be able to move forward, having everything embedded and taken care of as natural as possible, and not really slapped on, at the last or at the beginning and then forgotten. So that's really my expertise, to try to make it like common sense and make it as easy as possible.
Great. Very nice that you could be here with us again. Maybe your cat makes another appearance. Fingers crossed. Nuno, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm talking from Portugal, so also not very surprised. It's a lot of sun here at this time. I do work currently as a cybersecurity and privacy officer at Huawei in Portugal. So I make part of an European team of cybersecurity and privacy officers that basically our main role is to understand current regulations, legislations for cybersecurity and privacy, and translate that into our products and processes, and also make the bridge between customers and other stakeholders internally to our business to make sure that we comply with all the regulations and all the requirements for cybersecurity. My background, well, also not very distant from the others. I am an engineer. I've studied computer engineering, and my role and my basically my field of expertise back in the days was security testing and penetration testing. And actually one of the major big projects that I've done in my career was the creation of an incident response team in a big telecom company. And I've evolved to a global CISO positions, where I do believe my strength is to be able to translate technical controls to risk and to business understandable language, let's say that way.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important. I think today more than ever. So thank you for joining us. I'm just going to dive into today's discussion because we don't have a lot of time. For those of you who just joined, our format right now for the event is going to be about a 45-minute discussion followed by Q&A. So if you have questions throughout, you can drop them in the chat box or in the Q&A section. Makes it easier to track, but I definitely cannot control where the discussion happens. So feel free to share your thoughts in the chat as well, and and to spar there. So just to start off our discussion for today, what we're going to do is cover 3 topics. So the first is just going to be a general introduction or an overview to incident response, what it is, how it works, maybe some tips. And the second topic we're going to talk about is related to critical steps in planning. And that's going to be followed by our third topic, which is more related to taking action and analyzing outcomes and dealing with, I guess, the morning after. So I'm going to start off with our first question and keep it open to any of our panelists to respond, so to the group. And just feel free to unmute yourself and jump in. So just to start us off, what is incident response, and what does it look like in 2022, and why is it more crucial today than ever?
I'll probably start in, if you don't mind. I would say that probably response is a small part of what we are discussing here in terms of topic. Is probably management is more adequate to what we seek to do here. We all pretty much know the steps from the frameworks in terms of CSIR teams and how to manage incidents, but the evolution of incident response or incident management, I think, is very much related with what we can see happening globally in terms of cyber risk and cyber threats landscape. So I think it's an evolving game where organizations, even if they have CSIR teams or CERT teams instituted for a long time, they need to evolve and to adapt to the current cyber risk landscape that we are living today. The threats are not the same. The way that the threats are instantiated into the companies are not the same. So it's a cat and mouse game where we do need to put our efforts into actually, I would say, critical for our company and matching the way that incidents are happening in the current environment that we are living.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I thought what's interesting is I like your question as well too, because I think why is incident response more important now than it ever has been? It's because attacks cost more than they ever have. The impact is greater. Greater impacts equals greater importance. And I think you're seeing a more companies take a more focused view of, or do we have the right IR processes in place? Do we have the right people in place? Are we able to manage this correctly? Because they know that if they were to get that right, in the event of an actual breach or a cyber event, they have the ability to curtail the damage. And I think that's part of our job, is to help ensure that the damage is minimized as best we can, if not mitigated and or fully removed.
Totally agree. I would like to add on to the part, we as just people, consumers, customers, whatsoever, we are so used and everything being for us real time. So we're being used to have speed and everything being available to us. And with all these technological advancements, developments, however you want to call it, the threats are different. There is more, the attack vector, exposure for it increases, but also our desire to want to have it resolved ASAP. And for that, if something goes wrong, and things, they will go wrong, no matter how good you prepare things, how due diligent you have been, things will go wrong. And it's so important for us to be able to recover fast and deliver that value again to, your end users, customers, or whatsoever. Because if we don't, we are losing out on them. And, that also costs money in that sense. So it's just, overall important to be able to keep up and being able to move forward again and to where we originally were.
The loss of trust and the loss of everything that's connected to the business it's critical. And that's why the planning part is so important, because as you said, Victoria, it will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just when it's going to happen. And I think those are your words. So hope you don't mind me borrowing them. But yeah, it's that criticality that everyone needs to understand. And in the end, what we are hoping for all businesses and everyone involved in not just the incident planning, in security, is that trust is the most important asset that we need for everyone to understand that needs to be taken care of in terms of the business value we deliver.
Definitely. And I think Nuno touched on that when what he called a cat and mouse game, right? It's a matter of when, it's not a matter of if. And you guys touched on a few good points related to reputational impact, but talk a little bit more about maybe the business impact of having a poor incident response plan in place.
That's really bad. That's my professional expert opinion. It's really, really bad to have that. I think on average, we see data that shows if you can respond to an event in a certain period of time, I'm not going to use, I can't remember exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's somewhere, if you can, I think the mean time to respond to an event is somewhere 80 to 100 days or something along those lines. Find somebody, detect it, and actually respond to it. if you think about that, that's 100 days. That's almost a quarter. That's 3 months. So it takes 3 months to find something. You basically put at risk 3 months of your business, quite simply. Take your core, and this is rough magnitude of order kind of stuff. Take your business, divide the gross revenue by 4. That's what you're putting at risk just by having an incident response plan or incident response capability that takes that long. So controlling that number, being able to find, detect, and respond to incidents quickly is a direct material impact to the bottom line for your organization. So there's direct correlations to that, in my opinion. That's an area that I think we should talk more about, because I think most incident responders, this panel is great because we're having a business conversation. Most incident responders talk about it from a technical perspective, and their bosses go, yeah, it's great. We understand that. But the why really boils down to what is the business value we bring to the organizations.
And it's like, how do you talk to people who have this myth that they can avoid cybersecurity attack?
If we talk about the response procedures during cybersecurity, so actually the main goal of my team is actually to reduce the time the business is down. Okay, so there's a lot of mission, a lot of decision that we need to take the business out of this incident.
Maybe I asked the question a bit differently, or is it possible to avoid a cybersecurity attack today?
No, of course not. Actually, there's two main reasons. I would go to explain about vulnerabilities, for example. My first example is the zero-day vulnerability, which we cannot be prepared. Yeah, so it's not our fault. We just have to be ready for that to contain this incident. The second vulnerability is to depend on us. It's called one-day vulnerability, which was zero-day vulnerability before, and vendor is wrote to fix for that vulnerability. As now he's publishing his vulnerability for all of us to fix it. But it's now a race that who's gonna test this vulnerability first. Are we gonna fix it, or cyber criminals will try it on our network? As we know, cybercrime, cybersecurity, attackers are actually faster than us, because every CISO know that make changes on the network during the end of the quarter, something like that. It's interrupting the business. So we already pushed this deployment to the end of the day. But this time frame is very critical, okay? Because attackers just waiting for this vulnerability to publish, and they believe we didn't deploy this fix. So this is the main this is the main reason why we cannot totally avoid its cyber attack. But at least we can be ready. Okay, this is the most my best recommendation is just to be ready, be prepared, make your backups. IR can make a lot of magic, but it cannot avoid it all. Okay.
So Mario, yeah, I wanted to just move on to our second topic, and thank you, Itzik, for that. I wanted to move on to our second topic, which is, planning, incident response planning, and how to create an effective strategy. So Mario, why don't you start us off? What does an effective incident response plan look like?
Sure. I just want to build on something that you said recently. I mean, a cyber attack, a cyber event, however way you want to call it, it's going to happen. I like to use the analogy of a safe. Whatever we're building in all of those defenses, just try to delay the inevitable. It's about finding that before it actually happens, so you can actually prevent it. A safe will just delay someone from getting in, and hopefully you will catch it, or the police will catch it before they break into your safe. So that's all of these defenses and layers of defense that we keep building to defend our castle, even though that they can defend the castle mostly, it's long gone now. With that said, it's always good to take a proactive than a reactive approach to planning, right? And something I like to say is that you need to build the relationships with all of stakeholders. Again, to build on something that Jerry just said a moment ago. What would happen if you told the business, and not just like the C-suite, if you told HR, if you told marketing, like, or meantime to respond, to get back this business on track is 3 months? How will that impact you directly? And that will get people on board really quick. When you tell them that directly, without technical jargon, with just, us working again, it will take us 3 months. How does that sound to you? And with that, you build, or try to build, hopefully, a crisis management team, because we're not alone in a cyber incident. We have to build these relationships. We have to bring HR, we have to bring in marketing, public relations, anyone that can lend a hand, technical support, customer experience, whatever it takes to get a hold on this. And something that it's important, and it's something that we as a community need to do more of this, it's communication. Because the cybersecurity industry and community in general is very strong, and we're all willing to lend a hand, whatever it is that actually happens. So if we communicate and disclose, because this is a word that not many people like, disclosure of events, of things that happen. If we communicate more, we'll just become stronger. So being proactive rather than reactive should be the approach. And building a crisis team will be, for me, the first step in that successful incident planning plan. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Mario. Victoria, my next question is for you. How does prioritization fit into IR planning? Are all systems and incidents created alike, or do you rank them or their risks differently?
Well, incidents and risks definitely, they can differ. It really depends on the impact, how it impacts the organizations, all your stakeholders, whether internal, external. Every incident, it can be different. There's so many examples. So yeah, definitely, it's not all the same. So it's also really up to you to really get an understanding, like, how does it really affect us, our stakeholders. But nonetheless, regardless of that, the thing that will always matter is you want to recover from your incident as soon as possible. It's a disruptor of whatever you are doing. Like Mario said, if you want to get like your other stakeholders involved, like HR and marketing, but I always tell them, like, it would suck if you would have an incident and suddenly I need you to help us out, wouldn't it? Like, people don't want to get distracted and pulled from the daily jobs. They want to move forward, which is the whole idea of having an incident response plan. You can't plan exactly for the unexpected, but if you know what basic steps to take, if you do that, if you plan those things ahead, you can still, move fast and recover as soon as possible from the basic steps that you don't want to think about. You don't want to think like, oh, who should I inform? It's just good to have like a list beforehand when it comes to the prioritization, to know all the possible stakeholders you have in hand. You can literally like mark them out with a pen digitally, or even on paper if you print it out. Relevant, not relevant, relevant, not relevant, and then just follow seriously like a chart. Like, I personally like use kind of a timeline based on importance, who should know something first in the sense, so they can prepare. For instance, if you have your PR team, if something goes on, they need to have the time to prepare a statement publicly, depending again on your incident. But you want to have those people addressed first. For example, other stakeholders, which, they might come a bit later, even if it's 10 minutes later or whatsoever, there can be a sense in that. Have it beforehand. Let's say you mark it off. You don't want to think, just make yourself, make life easier so you can move forward to all the next steps that you have already planned out. So prioritization really matters. And making sure your steps are aligned well, optimized, so you can, recover from your incident as soon as possible. That's the whole goal, recover ASAP.
And Jerry, how does data management includes, knowing where data is stored, what's in each data set, who has access to it? How does that play a role in handling data breaches?
It's a fun one. And I'll kind of tie this into what Victoria just said as well, too. It actually goes back to prioritization. If you think about it, organizations, if we put on our IT hats, because yes, we're all security people, but we all use IT, right? I promise you, I'm calling from a computer. So we all use IT systems, and our businesses, the businesses we work at, have this concept of disaster recovery. They know what the critical systems and where critical applications are, and they've got those ready to be backed up and recovered from very, very quickly because they're the most important to the business. Yet when it comes to incident response planning and data, we tend to be, I think Mario said, is reactive versus proactive. And I think what we miss when it comes to incident response planning, especially when it comes to prioritization, is knowing simply what data do I have where, who's got access to it, and to be kind of really candidly blunt, do I care if it gets out or not? And do I care? Should I care? If you've got the secret sauce to your algorithms for your company that makes you business, that's really important. If you keep data about your employees' softball, soccer, football, cricket, whatever your sports teams is, and you got an internal league and you rack and stack those, I don't care. I'll be candid. That doesn't matter. But those are two business views of data. That's not a technical view of the data, right? So when you think about data management, the thing we have to get better at security is linking between what the business thinks, what's important to the business and what's important to us. Because I promise you, if you walked into your organization and you were like, hey, you know what, we're in the middle of an incident, I called HR, I called legal, we're all good. Oh, really? How come? Isn't that, is our crown jewel data getting hit? You go, I don't know. That's about the time the other person you should call is your career coach, because you might be in a little bit of trouble there. But if we can tie that to, hey, you know what? I'm sorry, we had an incident. We're responding really quickly. Here's all the stuff we're doing. And it turns out the impact of the business is low because the data is nothing more than, the standings for our internal sports teams. You give that conveyance of both assurance to the business, but more importantly, you save the business money, right? We save the business money, and we're doing our job as incident responders in that regard. So to me, understanding data and data management is absolutely critical in incident response. It's about the more you know up front, the better you can respond later on. And I promise IT does backup and recovery planning. They do disaster recovery planning, and they do it based on what's most important to the business. We need to do the same thing, especially when it comes to understanding what data is.
Definitely, well said. Did you want to add something to that?
Yes, so I think it was said already, but I would just like to leave everyone with one thought when they leave this webinar, which is actually rethink your incident response. It's not about technical response. It's about the business. It's how you will support the business to continue to operate. And when you go to business directors, if you go to your exec level, probably not to your CEO according to the size of your company, but if you go to your exec level, to your financial officer, to your legal officer, to your compliance officer, and to the responsibles for each business unit, and you directly connect with them and you say, okay, if we have an issue and your operation is stopped, how would you react? Like Mario said, how would you react? Who would you call? Who you contact? Do you need to contact the legal team? Do you need to contact the compliance team? Do we need, as a company, to contact regulators? Do you need to contact a regular cybersecurity national agency? Do we have such an obligation? How long should we take internally to respond to this? And this type of questions, and also putting what Jerry put into the conversation about data, if we start to pull these questions from the business, they won't know how to answer. And when they don't know how to answer, it's when you are now set to create relationships, to build the incident response team, and to define your playbooks. As an incident response team, you need to have playbooks, and the playbooks need to include everything important for the business, and you need to test them with the business and with other stakeholders.
Thank you, Nuno. And a question just for you all. We're talking about acting. You need to plan. You need to plan in order to act. Are there any response activities which actually can exacerbate the issue or make the situation worse?
As I said before, there's a lot of hard decision we need to say when we go on a scene. You have to keep in mind that at the scene, at the situation, the attacker is controlling. Okay, so we have to understand deeply the situation. We understand the attack very good to be able to take a decision. A wrong decision can harm the organization of going back on operation. And I can give one example for the cyber attack of today. It's not only about ransomware. Okay, it's about data exfoliation and data stealing. And it means that the attacker wants to stay hidden on the network. So sometimes when we get in the scene, attacker don't want to be exposed, and intensive IR activities on the network can attract his attention, and he can get aggressive and, for example, execute the ransomware. Okay, so now we have a data leak and a ransomware. So that's why we have to really understand the attack. And we have many tactics to identify the attacker persistency on the network and take actions to disconnect the attacker from the network. By doing that, the attacker is blind, okay, and we actually buy more time to respond.
Does anyone we have anything else to add?
Well, just a
Victoria?
small tip I would say is to not assume someone is on it, especially working more and more remotely. If you kind of assume, oh, someone is taking care of it, and you're actually wasting time. So it's so important to really confirm someone is still working on it. If someone needs help, so whatever, or needs a break, that that is going on or happening, so you can pitch someone else in to help or whatsoever, but not assume, because time is so critical to contain. There's no time to lose. So that's just something I would say that's really important.
And just a
Go ahead, Mario.
yeah, sorry. It's just I wanted to take the opportunity to connect what Nuno and you all have said. You build this playbook that you need. You're going to need this regardless, with asking those tough questions to the business. And the whole goal for you to having a playbook is that when you're in the incident, you'll know what to do, like Victoria said, step by step, with hopefully the peace of mind that you've tested this and that you know that these are the right steps, that you're communicating with the right people, and that you know that this will happen, this is the next step, because I promise you, I hope that none of everyone here in this meeting is ever in an incident, but we will be at some point. But I promise you that when that happens, a lot of things will happen at the same time. You will be overwhelmed. So having that playbook that you tested and that you discussed with the business and that you hopefully know that works is so critical. And Jerry, please go ahead.
No, you said it well. I think my comment is going to tie into, I think, the original question, and what both you and Victoria said is the one thing you can do that would be terrible is to panic. Don't panic. Don't panic. Like you're not the first company to be breached. You're not the first person ever to be responding. You're not the last person to ever be responding. Victoria said it well. Don't delay. Don't wait. Mario said it. You plan the work. You work the plan, but don't panic. That's sometimes we get a little excited when these things happen. Don't panic. It sounds so simple, but please don't panic.
And Jerry, I will add, and communicate and act transparently. Communicate, and I think also Mario touched on this point. Have a crisis team. One of the worst things that you can do is not know how to communicate and how to communicate that. If you do a lousy job on communicating the instant response, the instant, or worse, try to hide it, you will lose credibility. And there are a number of examples. For instance, I remember for studying one of the biggest incidents with JP Morgan Chase. Actually, because they communicated that so well to the customers and to the regulators, the stock prices even increased on that period. And I can give you another very close example. Here in Portugal, Vodafone had a massive attack. They were without service for several days. Of course, in the range of 1 week, pretty much 5 days, more or less, they could recover the 3G, the 4G, and all the B2C flows. So one of the good things that they did after this incident is they took this in a very transparent way. The CEO communicated this in a very professional and supported way with a proper crisis management team, and they actually created a marketing PR campaign with that incident to thank the customers, and their reputation increased because of that. So it's crucial that you take these lessons learned from other companies and you onboard it into your own processes.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about prioritization of, business outcomes, but I think what we're discussing here on a reputational level has to do with, customer data and prioritizing data privacy. So I think putting that front and center, making that your priority, and any of the external communications you have is super important. And I'm still waiting to hear back from Facebook about what happened. What was it, 6 months ago? Is it a year already? I never heard back about what that was. But I think there's already a sense of distrust there from many other incidents. Let's talk about a final question on this topic. And I just want to get, again, some tips. So what are some ways that IR managers can make IR planning less daunting? We touched on a few already. I want to get in any last tips that you have before we move on to our next topic.
I would say test and simulate, and actually put in practice what you have in the playbooks. Like Mario said, it's crucial that you test your instant response plan. You will never think clearly in the spotlight. When the incident is happening, you will not know how to do. You will not remember that you can put ACLs in routers on a technical way. You will not remember that you need to block whatever port on the firewall. You will never remember that you need to communicate to the regulator in an X period of time. You need to have this clearly defined, so you need to test it. You need to execute your playbook in a simulated way with the stakeholders.
Yeah, can I add something about simulation? The teams I mentioned earlier, we had a collaboration between this team, and we create an operation called Purple Team Activities, which means we can practice on your organization network the exact attack live, like a live demo of the attack. Great simulation with the red team that is actually creating the attack on the network with the code. Okay, the blue team is my team that use as a SOC and teach you how to detect the very first anomalies on the network. And all the operation is a great simulation. If you never experience a cyber attack, or if you experience but you missed it, so this is a great activity to learn how it works, to be prepared.
Any other thoughts on testing?
Not particularly on testing, but I would say just as a tip to make it less daunting, also online, there's so many playbooks or planning tips or guidelines. I would just highly recommend to also consult that, because there might be some things in it where you can, derive some value from it to improve your incident response plan.
Let's move on to our last topic, taking action. So what is the first thing we should keep in mind when executing our plan?
I guess it's a question for me again, or not.
You can start us off. Go ahead.
Sure. So Well, I think Jerry already kind of covered it, but my answer would be, really stay calm and make sure that people also don't forget to take care of themselves, because people might get drawn to incidents, especially incidents if they take a longer time. But I've kind of noticed in general that people are so busy, they forget about taking care of themselves. And personally myself, I used to be very involved in whatever kind of incident to also like help around. I kind of took a step back and really become more a facilitator and making sure, people have the food, order food for them, making sure people don't get stuck or snapped in like, oh my God, maybe if someone makes a mistake, if it's an incident caused internally or whatsoever, that people don't get snapped into, kind of faulting themselves and wasting time on not resolving the incident. Like, it's fine. Things happen. It's more important to just recover and take a look at the end to, to look at lessons learned, how we can improve for the next time, and just really focus and move on to, the issue at hand. Like Jerry already really highlighted, like, don't panic, don't stress, really make sure that people really understand that things happen. It's just important to recover. And if you're able to recover, that's a thing that we should celebrate at the end. You can't plan everything ahead. You can't always plan and resolve the unexpected the way you want it. Even if you have a plan, there may be so many reasons to not even being able to follow up the plan. The end goal is then you just focus on, there's something wrong, let's see how we can recover from it and have less distractions that, people get panicked or stressed or whatsoever. And that's just a very important realization to have, and also not to forget about the ending. So when you're executing an incident response plan, there should also be a step to analyze. Once it's contained, it's recovered, you already committed everything to everyone, making sure you have, people to trust you again, to really talk about the real root cause analysis, and not to like push it away and be like, oh, but it's resolved. Yes, but never waste a good incident. We hear this so much in our industry, never waste a good incident. Learn from it, really take, the approach like, but why did it went wrong? And why did that went wrong? The whole, 5 whys. It's so important to really, really invest in that part, because that gives you so much information and tips for a next time, which, all the panelists already say, it will happen. Let's just make sure that this incident, whatever it is, it's not the same one that recurs. See what lessons we can learn from that, feed it into the plan next time, so you become easier, at it, even more at ease, being able to resolve things. So you, in the end, you eventually help your business, moving forward, focus on the important thing that really matters.
Definitely. And Jerry, do you want to add on to that? Because I know I have a question for you coming up that's related to this topic.
That's like a cheat, right? You're asking me to answer the first question without knowing the question, so I'm supposed to just wing this. I like that. Thank you. See, this is like Victoria just talked about. You can never plan everything. Sometimes you just have to roll with the flow. No, I think she said it just very, very well. You can't. I love the way you said it. You can't plan everything, but I think the whole reason why training is important and why we build plans is not to. No plan survives first contact, right? There's never been a plan that survives first contact. But if you understand what your objectives are and you've got your primary goals outlined and you've trained, you can prepare better. And as Victoria mentioned, she's described a team. She didn't describe a lone wolf trying to run off and save the day. She described the process where everybody lends and everybody helps. And I think, remember, you're not in this alone. It's actually huge, right? The more you are together with your team, the better off you are. And I don't know what your next questions for me is going to be, but Victoria said it so well, so I'm just going to leave her as a prime example.
My next question actually is for Itzik, and I think it's probably the ultimate question: to pay or not to pay.
Yeah, it's a good question, but actually there is one answer. We suggest you not to pay ransom because it's actually target you as someone who willing to pay and prefer target for other groups. Secondly, it's support cybercrime. So if there is any way that you can avoid paying this ransom, just help us and let us help you. And if there's still a reason to pay for because you lost very important data, so we can help you with that as well.
Yeah, don't most clients pay in the end? Is this accurate or is this a myth? Victoria, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Itzik if he would give the same answer if it were a hospital and lives were at stake. Just out of curiosity.
It's a different, it's a tough question. It depends on the damage, all right? If it cannot be repaired, so of course we will go to a negotiation. But it should be the last thing you do.
In Ireland, I
Dissenting-
don't know if anyone followed that incident, but the healthcare system in Ireland was attacked and was compromised for quite some time, and a number of, again, human beings that had nothing to do with this were affected. So those are the tough questions, really.
If I can add, by chance today, one of the biggest central hospitals here in Portugal was targeted by ransomware. Of course, they are demanding a ransom in Bitcoin. And this connects directly to this question, to pay or not to pay. Of course, if you follow most of the movements, especially from the nomoransom.org, where they have a number of reasons not to pay, and they are all true, you are supporting cybercrime. You don't know if the key they will deliver to you will work to decrypt data. You will be targeted by a number of other cyber criminals because they know you will pay, and so forth. Of course, there are a number of aspects to take into account. And it should, of course, be the last resort, but it should be taken into consideration, because when you have lives in stake, you need to have this as a last resort. Even if it doesn't work, you need to put it on the table, and you need to have someone in the middle. There is a professional negotiator with these cyber criminals and these cyber actors, and they are most probably to have more success than you to negotiate, because you don't even know how to negotiate this. So also put in your IR plan, if you are targeted by a ransomware, who you should contact to negotiate this on your behalf. And I'm sure that most of people here in this call don't know who to turn into it. So it's a good thing to also understand who you should call, who you should put on the table to negotiate this. And last but not least, put on the table if you need to pay, but with the caution that it might not work, and it will potentially not work.
Yeah, I love that. That's just great advice. And it's funny because, you know, our first instinct as security professionals is to say, no, of course not. You can't pay, right? We're security people. We got it. Don't worry about it. I live on the East Coast in the United States, and you might remember the Colonial Pipeline incident from a little while ago. They paid, right? And then they got some of the money back, which God bless the government on that one. I guess my taxes went to do something good there. And you can quote me on that one because I don't like to get quoted on the government stuff normally. But there are times the decision to pay or not pay, I think you said it right, is it's a business decision. It is a literal business decision. And I would love for the day when incident response and the business can sit at the table and go, hey, we have this much ransom to pay. They're asking for this. And security can say, you know what, we can get this operational back and recovered in such a short time frame, you don't have to pay. Or we can't pay it. Like that should be a variable in the equation. We have to be confident enough to be able to say yes or no. Because at the end of the day, it's a business decision. And you said it well. You really said it well. It is all about what is the best for the business. And there's no guarantee either way. But if you have paid, if you're on this call and you have paid, don't feel bad. There's a lot of people who pay and just don't talk about it because you have to.
That's the whole point. You want to have the discussion now when there's no incidents. You want to have the input right now and not when it happens.
I have known companies who have had Bitcoin in reserve for this very kind of thing.
And this is also where governments need to understand and collaborate with business, because there are some that want to make it illegal to pay ransomwares. So if those legislations move ahead, companies will have a big problem, and then the government will have to support those organizations. So it will also be a financial burden on them, which in the end of the day, there's a line between you are a public or private organization, and you need to be within a scope of regulation that is also not too damageable to your business, right? We need to take this into consideration.
Mario, what is the most important part of data recovery in your opinion?
This is a topic that I guess no one likes, and it's not as sexy as others, but Jerry brought it earlier in the discussion. And most people will tell you that it's to test your backups early and often, or you should be doing this regardless. Not for me to tell you, but you need to know your data. This is crucial. You need to know what it is. You need to know where it is, and like Jerry said, you need to know if it goes out, is it important? I mean, if it's payroll, yes, of course, but if it's the sheet of players of your softball team, like I said, I mean, is it that bad that it got out? We can live with that, right? So it's something that most companies, as they grow, they start overlooking, because the bigger you are or the larger you are, the more data you have. But you need to start this exercise way earlier in the incident response planning. You need to know your data. You need to know where it is. You need to know what it is. You have to have your tools in place to prevent other risks, data leakage, etc. But again, the data is critical to the business. And if you don't know what it is, you don't know how to protect it, and what are you going to do if it goes out. Thank you.
Jerry, how do we know that we've contained an incident? Like, what's the milestone for that?
Yeah, it's funny because there's three answers actually. There's the technical answer when we think we've got it all covered and we can't find any traces and our systems are back and operational. There's the business answer, which is we're not losing money anymore. To me, it's always actually I like to add a third level onto that. And have we done both a business and technical retrospective? Right. One of the most important parts of any process is to look back after you finish it and say, what could we have done? What did we do well? What did we do poorly? And what can we do better the next time? If you can objectively answer, if you're at that point in an incident, you're done. But you have to do that part. Too often we just, we're done. It's over. Life is back to normal. Let's go find another fire to put out. That's how we're built. And so I think the more we do, that's why I don't end anything until we've done a retrospective. Because once you've done a retrospective, you're now standing back. You finished the technical piece, because it's not the technical piece. Like Nuno, I think you said, when the Vodafone in Portugal took the results of their, what they did and used that as a marketing campaign. So they were able to step back and go, well, we finished the technical thing, we finished the business thing. Hey, that was great marketing. Maybe we should do this fun thing again, right? Let's have another incident. I don't think they would say that, but they, having that retrospective, being able to stand at the end of this and look back both on the business and technical side is, to me, the point of being done. Because then you even know you've closed the loop, you've dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and you've handled all of it with the business as well too. You just shouldn't go, hey, systems are operational, good luck business, we're all back to normal. To me, it's that retrospective that ends things well.
Victoria, talk a little bit about this process of reporting incidents to both internal and external stakeholders. Any tips, any advice?
I think we already covered it a little bit. Like, it has to be part of your plan. So familiarize yourself, like who the stakeholders are, include the contact information. So at a time when something does happen, you're now like trying to find phone numbers or forum where you have to report an incident. You want to have things fast at hand. So that's so important. And incidents happen. So the worst thing that you can do is not report it to your stakeholders. I mean, things happen, which is not an excuse if there's really a lack of due care or due diligence. But even, I think I mentioned it many times already, no matter how hard you try, things will still happen. It's so important to be transparent, to communicate, to not be that jerk to try to hide things. Because if you do that, you are losing trust with whoever you're talking to. No one likes to be lied to. We want to understand, okay, what went wrong? What have you done to make sure you become better at it? In case it happens in the future, what have you done to prevent it? Like Jerry already said, that retrospective is so important to make sure you can recover again. And I think you were also asking for some tips in that end regarding that retrospective. What I like to do, because I do have a plan, I always like to note down when each part of the plan kind of has been resolved or activated. I literally write down the time, so at the end of the retrospective, we'll follow every step. And when I kind of really notice that people somewhat get excited, like, oh, we have done this, we have recovered so fast. They see this whole process, who was involved, when someone was, contacted first, when a small sub-step was resolved. You kind of get this high, oh, we're getting better at even at the small incidents, to become better, to have this overview of what happens, and being able to kind of celebrate at the end that you've got this, you've got this covered. It doesn't make it less sucky that, an incident did happen, but it makes it easier. It also helps the people who are involved, who especially they're part of your, crisis team, incident response team, to also release that stress of what we talked before, that, sometimes people may panic or whatsoever. So people become also more confident. We're going to look at it at the end. We will see what we can improve and do better. It doesn't have to be this very daunting thing. Again, no one likes incidents, but the best that we can do is try to make it as efficient and kind of where we can, as fun as possible. So we also feel more confident, when an incident strikes.
Definitely. And I want to, sorry, Jerry, did you have something to add to that?
No, she's got a great answer.
Your mic was off. So I would like to move on to Q&A soon and then do a smooth outro. So I want to invite our audience to submit any questions they may have, and then we have some questions piling up already. And before we jump to that, I'm just going to throw out a final question for the panelists. Talk a little bit about your take on cybersecurity insurance. Is it worth investing in? And any tips or advice in how to choose one?
So I'll give you my one yes, short answer, yes. But years ago, a friend of mine told me in the cyber insurance space, he goes, you should think of cyber insurance kind of like life insurance. It's one of those things you get to, everybody should have, but you don't really want to ever have to use it. It should be part of your mitigation and strategy plan, but it should not be part of your operational mitigation plans. Like, in other words, you need to have it to cover some of the costs we talked about, but you leverage it when you need to. And that goes back to the question about paying ransom as well, too, because these people do know what kind of policies you have. They can find that out. They can know what your coverage levels are, but it is still a very critical thing, not for us on the technical side, but it is very important for the business because you can lower their costs. And so my one suggestion would be to make sure that whoever is responsible for incident response in your organization talks to the guy buying insurance or the woman buying insurance, because that communication, we've talked about communication, that communication doesn't happen. And then it's like, oh, by the way, here's what you have to do for incident response. And it's like, hang on a second, that's not what I signed up for. So please do that communication. That's actually a big thing with cyber insurance.
I'll just piggyback on that, Jerry, and say also in a short answer, of course, yes, it is an insurance. It is crucial that you are protected against unexpected events. But I will give one advice, which is to carefully understand the exclusions that you are subject for the insurance to pay the money in the event of a cyber incident, because there are a number of exclusions. If you don't fulfill, you won't get paid. And of course, the insurance is only good if you actually see your money back and on the return on the investment on the insurance. So take a very close attention to the small letters on the contract and clearly understand what the insurance company needs to do to you to provide you the insurance and to pay you after an incident, and if you do fulfill all of those requirements. Otherwise, it will be pretty much a waste of time and money.
I only nodding because yes, insurance is important. So yes, you should get it. But it's one of those things that you rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So like Nuno said, pay attention to the fine print, learn what you're signing up for, know what's the scope, what's covered in this, because this cyber insurance, and lots of companies think of it this way. They see it as the silver bullet, like the holy grail. This is my crutch. If something happens, I'll just let insurance deal with it, and job done, happy days. But that's not the world we live in. So if you have it, good, but know what you have. That's like data. You have to know what you have, because then you don't know what it's going to really cover for you.
And also these things keep changing. So it's also really a recommendation, to check like every year, every few years, to just check around, ask for, some other companies, see what they have to offer. I mean, it's not one thing you want to buy and then just assume for the rest of your life it's going to be okay. You also have to invest in maintaining this, making sure it's still the right fit, or perhaps move on to a different provider.
Definitely. Thank you guys for that. I wanted to move on to Q&A now, and I have a few questions, but I would like to see maybe some more come in from the audience. I'm sure you guys have them, so don't be shy. We don't bite. Let's go to our first question from Lydia. The question goes as follows. The company, well, I'm not going to paraphrase it because I'm not sure if I'm paraphrasing it correctly, but the company must test own IRP. So how often, for example, should a company test out their plans? I paraphrased it in the end, but.
I can start with this. I think it depends a lot, because if you actually you are responsible for an incident response team or incident response plan, you scope a lot of business units within the company, right? You don't have probably one overall incident response plan for the whole company. So you need to slice this into business areas, into for each business areas, the critical scenarios. So if you go around and you test each critical scenario for each business unit or business area that you have within your company, you will see that you will be pretty much the whole year round performing simulations and testing to incident response plans. So that's why I say it depends on the number of critical scenarios that you have. It depends on the size of your team. It depends on the business units that you have within your organization. Of course, you should have like a master crisis plan for your organization, but then slice it down to business areas and test 1-2 critical scenarios for each of the business areas. And probably you will do this on a yearly basis, on a quarterly basis. Depends really on the number of people that you have and the number of scenarios that you have selected. If you have someone specifically dedicated to test your incident response plan, then probably that person will be fully allocated the whole year performing simulations. But at least I would say minimum once a year, which should be aligned to the review of your policies.
Pick any framework, and any framework will tell you that at least yearly reviews. But as with everything, the answer really depends on business needs. It's not the same a company that has 50 employees and one that has 5,000, 50,000, etc. So, and incident planning and simulation takes time and takes resources. So again, it depends on your business needs, on how much resources you can spare, and the scenarios you're facing. It's not the same a tabletop exercise for ransomware than, I don't know, full-blown nuclear war scenario, pandemic, zombies, I don't know, whatever way you want to play your incident. It's never the same. So yes, you should test it, but early and often, of course, but it depends on your business needs.
I think it's not only just about the cost, the effort that you put on cybersecurity. It's about reputation. Okay, if you have customers or whatever, if your reputation is damaged, I think it's worth more than any money that you can put in the security of your organization. So you have to keep in mind and take it on first priority.
We have our next, thank you guys. We have a next question here, which is it's part question, part rant. I don't know if it's a rant exactly. It's more as someone trying to work their way through their own understanding or through this question of to pay or not to pay. So Katie says, 2 people or 2 panelists have shared that paying a ransom paints a target on your back for other attackers to attack you. And it's something that I've heard before. Do you have support you can provide for this argument? Because of course, not dealing with the root cause of the breach will open you up to more attacks from ransomware gangs. And I agree with not paying the ransom, but I can't use the quote, it paints a target on our back argument when I talk to clients without evidential support. I'd love to hear any stories you might have from your experience to speak to this argument. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use the word rant in a way that was dismissive, just more long in length to
Yeah,
describe
I can
it.
also start with this one, and I'll be brief. I think there are a number of studies that we can look on this. I don't have any study on the top of my head, but I do know that for instance, the No More Ransom project, the FBI, they do have several reports that claim that if you do pay a ransom, you will be more likely to be targeted again, and you will be supporting an industry and making the industry basically work. So more organizations will be targeted by ransomwares. And also, I remember, I believe it was Cyber Reason that issued a report that around 80 or 7, I think it was 80% of the organizations targeted by a ransomware that paid were again victims of a target of a ransomware. And if you think about it, if you are a cyber criminal and you attack an organization, that organization pays, you kind of think that they are predisposed to pay again if the same happens. And you will repeat this until they don't pay anymore, and then you'll move to the next one. I think it's a matter of understanding the logics behind the industry of cybercrime. If someone gives you money for something that you do, then you'll try to do it again because it's an easy way, right?
Money often, is a motive for a crime, and that's why data which is the new currency, is always kind of a motive for a crime. And if you're easy to attack, or being able to retrieve some money or data, then in general you'll be an interesting target. What I do know, because I had this discussion also before, at various events, I know, and I'm not sure if that's the case here, but I know of some people who assume if you pay, they promise to never attack you again. And they assume that, oh, well, we paid, we are okay. Of course, you have to remove all the malware and stuff, and you have to do that diligently. And it might just be worth investing, having a real third party to help you to make sure everything is contained, really remove, not just delete the file, but really put it back from an image before you were attacked in the first place. Making sure that that door that they kind of enter to place the ransomware, that door is really closed, and really invest in making sure you make it very difficult for people to attack you in that sense again. I mean, it's so important to really make sure it's contained and really eradicated. You might not prevent it, in the future, but as Nuno already said, once you have done it, why wouldn't you do it another time? That's something, people will keep in mind just by logical thinking.
Yeah. Thanks, Victoria. And Fabrizio also shared, thank you, Fabrizio, a LinkedIn article, which asserts that as well. I would like to play devil's advocate for a second and argue maybe that, paying the ransomware isn't necessarily enablement. The enablement is the lack of security or the lack of guardrails in place, right? Not enough training, education, and especially the change to remote work. This is also what has triggered and caused a lot the spike in ransomware, I think, that we've seen starting back as early as 2019. So we have one more question, and then I think we will wrap up. Abdul Malik is asking what kind of evidence to collect for incidents management that you can show stakeholders or possible auditors.
Well, I can also start with this one. I think, again, it depends. The thing that you need to take into consideration when gathering evidence is that evidence must be gathered in a way that they are acceptable if you need to go to court, for instance. They need to be in a tamper-proof. They need to be, for instance, stored in a warm device like write once, read many. You need to prove integrity in the evidence that you collect. If you do, there are a number of tools to effectively, let's say, replicate images of servers to collect evidence in a tamper-proof way. But for that, you need to have a proper forensic team that knows what to do, because evidence collection is really hard, especially when you talk about evidence collection on very sophisticated attacks, when nothing is stored and everything is done on a volatile memory. So those kind of evidence collections are really, really hard to do. So the answer is it depends. Depends on the incident. It depends on what you need to evidence and to who. For instance, auditors, I wouldn't say that, but for compliance or for regulators or for agencies, national security agencies, you probably need their support also to help you to take those forensic evidence collection.
Those people are also good to have on your contact list to also know who to call.
Exactly. And first, the why. Why are you doing this? And you may not have the resources to have a full-fledged forensic team on your side, but you can always retain a team. You can vet them and make sure you have them on standby if you ever need them. Because as Nuno said, this is not something you can do on your own without a very particular set of skills to do it properly. I mean, it's just the whole chain of custody. If you're actually collecting evidence to an end, it's not easy. It's not something you can just do.
Just the process of evidence collection can tamper with the evidence, and they will not be acceptable.
Exactly. It's just.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nuno, for that. And thank you, everyone, for your vast insights and for a really wonderful discussion. And thank you to our audience for joining us, as well as all of our speakers, Itzik Nehama, Mario Bellotti, Jerry Caponera, Nuno Teodoro, and Victoria van Roosmalen. We hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy. And I look forward to hosting you guys at many more events like these. So thank you once more.
Thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you. Thank you all.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. One last thing, one final note: to get in touch with any of today's panelists, you can reach out to them directly. All of today's attendees will be receiving an email in the coming days with contact information for each of our panelists. So if you want to follow up with them on any questions you may have related to today's discussions, don't be afraid to drop them a line and get in touch. And to stay up to date on Hub Security's upcoming events, you can follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter, or check out our weekly digest on Medium. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone, once more.